Have you ever looked at a new car and you've maybe taken it out for a test drive or just been looking in a magazine, and then the next time you go out on the road you just seem to see them everywhere? Now this isn't because there are now suddenly more of these cars on the road, but because you have more of an interest in it. The scientific name for this is the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, and understanding it will totally transform how you make your thumbnails and the results you get from them. So this phenomenon, I'm not going to say again because, well, I just can't say that word again, is nature's click-through rate weapon. What is it? Well, in its simplest form, it just means we notice the things we're interested in way more than the things we're not. So if you play the bass guitar, you will notice the bass line in a song more than people who don't. If you're interested in painting, you'll notice the artwork on a wall more than someone that does not. The reason this happens is because it's just not possible for our minds to soak in every detail that surrounds us all of the time. So your brain's got the job of deciding which thing requires your focus and what to ignore. So when you're exposed to brand new information, especially if you find it interesting, your brain takes notice and then everything else just gets blurred. So you might be thinking, why on earth are you telling us this, Ed? Well, it's because this natural phenomenon plays into YouTube's hands quite nicely. Because YouTube exists to work out what interests viewers, and then to give them more content that keeps that interest satisfied and coming back to the platform to watch more and more. So in its simplest form, it means all we have to do as creators to satisfy a viewer's urge to click is to make something they're interested in and then create an image that the viewer's brain can recognize like that as soon as it sees it. Now, of course, that's way easier said than done, and YouTube will be displaying lots of videos it thinks viewers will be interested in, but just knowing that your potential viewer's brain wants to find your content should give you some hope. But there is a big problem here. Well, there's actually a few big problems. Why can't this just be easy? And it kind of sucks for smaller channels and new channels, because really, you potentially only have one real way you can use the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon for your thumbnails, whilst larger channels have more. Here's why. Your potential viewers need to have an interest in something to notice you. So it's not necessarily the case that the algorithm favours larger channels simply because they are larger channels, but that actually these channels have a larger initial audience of people who are interested in the topic, or they're simply just interested in that creator, or both. Which means their potential audience, they've probably spent years building because of this whole brain situation, are just more likely to notice their videos when they're shown to them than yours. And then as a result, they're more likely to click on them. And if they then deliver high watch times and retention, YouTube will keep pushing that video out. Many of you might not have an initial audience, which means you might not yet have the ability for your face on your thumbnail to have the same interest factor as a creator with regular viewers. And although that does suck, it might actually give us some direction as to how we should design our thumbnails. Meaning it might be sensible for smaller channels to focus on making their thumbnails work more towards the topic that is of interest to the viewer, rather than themselves. Don't take that to mean don't appear on your thumbnail. Don't take that to mean don't appear on your thumbnail. Don't take that to mean don't appear on your thumbnail. Just that the topic is something a potential viewer's brain will notice on autopilot, not necessarily you yet. Which brings us on to another issue. And this, I'll tell you what one issue is, the squeak on this chair. Oh, I've got to change that, one sec. My word. The problem now is interest. Now we know that interest is the thing that gets you noticed, but annoyingly, interests change, people change. And then they use YouTube in different ways, and as a result of that, the way you design a thumbnail should probably take this into consideration too. So let me try and explain. If a viewer searches for a video about how to unblock a sink, let's say, they find one, and then it solves their issue. Their search intent has been satisfied. So they're probably not excited to find more sink unblocking videos. So if YouTube decides to blast more content on that topic to the viewer on, let's say, the YouTube homepage, they'll potentially be going to suggest something the viewer has no interest in. So YouTube, for the good of its mission to keep people watching more and more content, has to stop showing sink unblocking content to that viewer, or actually other people with the same viewing behaviours too. And that's why YouTube has multiple algorithms. To combat this, they break down a video's stats into traffic sources, which is where your views come from. And the video's results are determined by the data from these individual sources. It's why thumbnails and click-through rates can perform awfully on the homepage or in suggested views, but amazing in search, or the other way around. And that's why you not only need to consider how to make a thumbnail that auto triggers interest up here, but for design, it might also be wise to think about where you want this video to be discovered based on the viewer's intent, the viewer's point of entry, and the goal and strategy you have for that content. And that is the reason you might need to rethink your thumbnails. There are so many ways to design them to appeal to the Baader phenomenon. So my next video is going to cover the basics of thumbnail design, And then after that, I'm going to go deeper into how to specifically design thumbnails for search. And then another video based on designing thumbnails for getting homepage views. Because I think it's helpful for smaller channels especially to split these things up.